Hey Global Village, what's up? Okay, this whole artificial intelligence mania is really starting to irritate me. I have a considerable amount of contempt for people like Jensen Wong, Sam Altman, Elon Musk, people that I believe are nothing but grifting businessmen who are selling the entire industry and the whole world as a collective this story about artificial intelligence, and specifically artificial general intelligence and super intelligence, as if it's this incredible holy grail that's just around the corner and is going to transform everyone's lives for the absolute better, despite the fact that the track record of large language models like ChatGPT, Anthropic, Gemini, etc., appear to be doing genuine social and intellectual harm to the new generation, the young children that are coming up today, who appear to be quite literally losing their ability to engage in critical thinking. It's quite scary. And so I decided I want to create this video with a very specific goal in mind, to be a kind of stake in the ground, my attempt to just try to fight back against this bullshit narrative. Now, of course, I've created other videos in the past about this, but here I just have a specific, I guess you could say, agenda of items that I want to cover off, and in a specific order, so that hopefully we can come away from this just realizing that a lot of what these people are talking about is simply not informed by serious and intellectual conversation framed by actual integrity and honesty, because that is not what's going on. That is not what is fueling this AI mania. So, as I said, I have a specific idea of the order in which I'm going to approach this conversation. And I thought the first thing to do would be to talk about artificial general intelligence. Because when you hear people like Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg refer to these things, they never make any real attempt to define the term. And I think the reason for that is it's not useful for them to do so. If they just treat it as some sort of vague marketing hype, whereby they can speak the words and then leave it to the imagination of the lay people who are just standing back and listening to them, as though these people must know what they're talking about, then they don't have to put in any hard yards to explain what they really mean and exactly how their large language models are somehow going to achieve this goal. So the first thing is, let's go ahead and try the very difficult task of talking about what artificial general intelligence might mean, because it's not easy to come up with a clear and concise definition of such a vague and broad spectrum term. So we're just going to do our best, and I think in doing that, it again allows us to put a stake in the ground and give us a genuine frame of reference as to exactly what it is they think they're promising. Now, this is just my opinion here, but I think artificial general intelligence, at least as we might understand it to be in reference to the intelligence we already know, which is our own, is that as a prerequisite, we need consciousness. And I will attempt to justify what I'm saying here. So why might we need consciousness? Well, as you know, consciousness, or as you hopefully will know, consciousness is that which allows us to know ourselves, to recognize and distinguish myself from, say, the other, and to also have a theory of mind. But more specifically, what might that also mean? Well, it means that using our consciousness as a foundation to build upon, we can create world models. Now, I think it would be hard to create a world model without the foundation of consciousness. To me, it would be like trying to build a sandcastle in the air. It's simply not going to happen. It will just fall apart into fragments of sand. So the foundation is our consciousness, and leveraging off our consciousness, we construct world models. And these world models are multifaceted. For example, we create a world model of our physical reality. It is that world model that allows us to negotiate stairs, to open doors, to recognize people, to differentiate different types of objects, to engage and use kitchen utensils appropriately. So again, with our consciousness being the foundation, we then are able to construct world models which can be leveraged in a meaningful way, given our ability to identify self, to identify others. And these world models are not just physical. For example, we create social and cultural world models as well. We create world models that give us an idea of what is the appropriate way to behave around other people, the appropriate things to say, the type of rules that we apply to ourselves and expect of others as we negotiate our societies and relationships. So again, these world models are highly complex things. They're not simple at all. Now that we've established that maybe this is a way of understanding artificial general intelligence, this ability to construct useful and meaningful world models in context of our own existence and awareness of our own existence, we then are able to learn things about the world and understand things about the world and continue to furnish and enrich these world models. And also, with consciousness comes autonomy. So another thing about artificial general intelligence is its capacity to seemingly bootstrap itself. In other words, we are our own agents. We have agency. We make autonomous decisions about the direction of our own lives, about the things we choose to learn, about the things the values we develop about the world. So this might be another way of understanding what artificial general intelligence might need to encapsulate. So with all that said, we've at least kind of created a bit of a sense, a bit of some boundary fences upon which we might be able to understand what AGI is, or what we might actually expect of it when comparing it to the sort of intelligence we know and enjoy as humans. So with that out of the way, let's now talk about how machine learning works, and in the most mechanically fundamental way possible, because I think it's important to just get a solid understanding of what these large language models are actually built on, what they represent in terms of the underlying technology, so we can then compare that to our discussion about AGI and what we might expect or want from AGI systems. And it so happens you can construct a form of machine learning where you don't even need a computer. And so how we're going to do this is we're going to talk about the game tic-tac-toe, or noughts and crosses. And it turns out, if you consider noughts and crosses, which is basically 9 cells in a crosshatch, that represents 304 possible game states. If you were to play any game of noughts and crosses, all of the possibilities, all of the, I guess you would call them permutations, the sum total comes to 304. So it turns out that we can actually represent each of those game states using a matchbox. And what we're going to do is we're going to fill those matchboxes with matches, and we're going to have these matches color coded, and each color will represent one of the 9 cells on the square. So it will represent positionality, whether you're going to put a nought or a cross in a given cell, given the color of that match. And like I said, there's 304 and possible layouts. And so, for example, a completely blank layout where there's no noughts and no crosses added in is one such game state. And if you were to put a cross in the top left-hand corner, then that would be another possible game state. And so you could imagine a cross in each of one of the 9 cells, then that would be possible 9 game states. Now, the other thing to consider is that some of these game states will represent partially filled out cells as the game progresses. And so in that case, the matchboxes that represent these game states will only have matches in it that represent the still vacant and empty cells. So they will only have colors that map to those available cells which have not yet been filled. All right, so now that we've got that out of the way, we have our 304 matchboxes, and at the beginning, before any of the training is done, we load up the matchboxes with an even number of each of the colored matches into the matchboxes. And it's there's an equal probability or equal weighting of each of those colors. So there's no probabilistic preference as to which match you will select if you select a match out of the box at random. And then what we do is we play many games using these matchboxes as our opponent. And when I say many, I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of games. Now, so for example, you put a cross in the center. Then you go to the matchbox that represents that game state, open it up, pull a match out at random, and given the color of the match, you then put a nought into the cell that match represents. And then you go and put in another cross wherever you want to. Then you go and find the next matchbox that matches the next game state and repeat. And what you do at the end of the game is you then assess who won. So if I won, the human, then all of the matches that were taken out of the matchboxes that led up to that result do not get returned to the matchboxes. If, on the other hand, the matchboxes won, then you return the matches back to their respective matchboxes, and then you put 2 more matches of the same color into those matchboxes. And what this does is it changes the weighting. So anytime the matchbox AI wins a game, you reinforce its victory by putting more matches in that led to the victory into each of the game states. And if they lose, you simply don't return the matches back into the matchboxes, thus weakening the weighting for those particular states that resulted in a loss. And again, if you do this enough times, hundreds of times over, many hundreds of games, you will find that you are actually training these matchboxes to actually play tic-tac-toe, and each time it will play a better and better game, to the point where it will be hard, if not impossible, to actually beat your matchbox opponent, and you will end up probably just getting draw after draw, assuming you're proficient at playing tic-tac-toe. So that is honestly the simplest and most obvious way to understand machine learning. And the reason we walked through that little example is that I hope it makes people realize that there is nothing magical about it. It is purely mechanical. It is a mechanical form of logic that we can manifest simply by using matchboxes and matchsticks, and then applying that particular protocol as part of the training method. Now, really, the only thing that separates that example that we just talked through there and these large language models is one of scale and depth. Because what we talked about there is machine learning, in that you could treat each matchbox as a neuron, but each matchbox would be a single layered neural network, so one single layer. However, deep learning uses multiple layers of neural networks where they change the level of abstraction at each layer. And this kind of deep learning and this level of sophistication is what led really to much more powerful forms of AIs that could do really interesting things, like, recognizing a photo of a cat. But with that in mind, given that it's just, we're creating multiple layered hierarchical neural networks, the basic learning and training mechanism remains intact from what I just talked about there, whether it be learning images of cats or whether it be learning to know what to reply to someone typing in a question with regards to large language models. It's all basically the same. So this is just raw mechanical logic. There's nothing magical about it. There's certainly no presence of consciousness. You would not look at your smartphone and believe that your smartphone is conscious. You wouldn't drop your smartphone in the toilet and feel like you were drowning a conscious organism, or throwing your phone against a wall because you were really frustrated and then feeling that you were guilty of homicide. Okay, these are just inanimate objects ultimately. And as I said, if we're talking about artificial general intelligence, I just cannot see how we can have an expectation of the type of AGI as I explained it, with its capacity to create meaningful world models and its capacity to contextualize them properly in relationship to itself, which implies that it has a sense of self to begin with. This kind of deep learning simply has no, it does not connect. There is no connection to this kind of expectation. There are massive qualitative breakthroughs that we are yet to achieve before we can actually start to talk about, I think, meaningful AI in terms of artificial general intelligence, and certainly AGI that in some sense has actual agency in any sensible meaning of the word. I simply don't see it. How on earth can large language models, which are just a magic trick, it's a party trick, we've been deceived into anthropomorphizing this technology because it's using our own language to deceive us. It's being trained on language constructed and used by humans, between humans, and then it's using this mechanized training method to understand how to parrot that back to us in a way that makes it appear as if we are engaging with another conscious entity. But nothing of the sort is happening. when people develop these parasocial relationships with an AI, with a chatbot, they are being deceived. The relationship is working in one direction only, and it is the human who is forming the relationship with the AI. The AI is not forming a relationship with you. It could care less about you, despite the fact it may have been trained to imitate the behavior of a person who might act otherwise. It's an imitation game. It's all it is. I think that's pretty much it, actually. I think I've said all I need to say. I'm deeply frustrated by this. I think people are being deceived in a monumental level into treating AI, both what we have now and what they're promising to be in the future, as something that is just a figment of our imagination. Now, I don't think that AI is always bad, and I have a lot more to say about that as it relates to me personally, in terms of my own journey and in terms of the ways I am literally creating meaning in my life, having lost most of my eyesight. Because you better believe I am using AI to help me in my journey as a creative writer. And as I said, I will be talking more about that at the appropriate time. So it's not like I don't think AI can't be of legitimate assistance, and in fact potentially be of profound assistance to people who find themselves in a certain situation, as I do. So it can be for the benefit of humanity and society. But do I think people like Sam Altman, like Jensen Huang, like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, do I honestly think these unbelievable scumbag pieces of shit who are there just for personal enrichment and who just sell us this bullshit story without really getting down and dirty and actually being honest about what is truly going on with their technology and what AGI should and might actually mean without defining their terms properly? These people are full of shit, and we need to push back, because this is costing society a lot of money, and it's people's pension funds are potentially being used to prop up this industry. And when it all comes crashing down, there could be serious repercussions, not dissimilar to what we saw in 2008. Now, I don't know for sure where all the money is coming from, but it's got to be coming from somewhere, from real-world investments, real-world assets that stand behind all of this money that's been loaned out and which is being set on fire by companies like OpenAI, incinerated, billions and billions of dollars in this pursuit of greed by these asshole executives. Anyway, Bendy out.